Negative leverage. We don't want negative leverage. We only want positive leverage. Once you go through this and once you watch this, you're gonna be able to instantly look at any sort of real estate deal and go, boom, yes, no. All right, guys, so let's talk about a purchase of real estate, okay? So let's say we were gonna go purchase a $2 million building and we were gonna put 20% down and the bank was gonna give us 80%. So our 20% down on this would be $400,000. Now, let's say that this was a 10-unit apartment complex, okay? And the rent per unit was currently $800. That would mean the monthly income is $8,000 and the annual income was $96,000, okay? Now, let's say that the annual expenses on this deal between taxes, insurance, all of that good stuff was $40,000. That would leave us with a NOI of $56,000. Now hold up, if you don't even know what NOI stands for, you don't need to watch the rest of this video. What you need to do is listen or read, whatever you want to do. My best-selling book, Skip to Flip. You can have it absolutely free. Get it in the link below or haydencrabtree.com/free book. I'll also post up here a link to listen to it on YouTube. Absolutely free, okay? So then we have an NOI of $56,000, which is $96,000 minus $40,000, and we have debt payments of $104,000. Now let's talk about that. So we're gonna get a 30-year loan at a 5% interest rate, and if we're borrowing 80% of $2 million, that means we're borrowing $1.6 million, and our payments will come out to $104,082 a year. Now I wanna introduce you to a concept called the mortgage constant. Okay, an interest rate is how much we are paying in interest, but it is not the only payments that we're making, right? Because we also are paying off principal, and that has to be considered. So with the mortgage constant, I got this from a book called The Wealthy Code. Let me see who The Wealthy Code was written by. It's a great book. George Antone, amazing book. I would highly recommend you read this book. It's one of the first ones I did, and it is a really good book. So I got the mortgage constant, the term from him, and all that essentially is what is my annual payments on a loan divided by how much money I've borrowed, okay? So here, all we've done is we've taken $104,000 divided by $1.6 million. So you can see our interest rate is 5%, and we are paying 5% a year on the money we owe, but our mortgage constant is actually 6.51. And so that's showing how much we pay to the bank in total, interest and principal, divided by how much money we borrowed. So what does this have to do with negative leverage? Well, let's come back over to this side. If we want to look at our cash flow, right, we take our NOI minus the annual debt payments of $104,000, and that would give us a negative $48,082 a year of cash flow, okay? Not good, we're losing money. If we were to do a cash on cash, it'd be our cash flow divided by how much money we put into this deal, which here is negative 12%. It means for every $100 we put in, we lose $12 a year. Never good, we never wanna buy a cash flow negative deal, okay? So what I want to show you guys, and this really all kind of stems from a conversation I was having with one of my mentoring students the other day, is they brought a deal to me and they said, Hayden, you know, this deal right here, I'm going to go out and I'm not going to get any debt on it because, well, if I got debt on it, it wouldn't cash flow. So I'm just going to buy it in all cash. And I go, well, hang on a second. That doesn't make any sense, really. Like, if a deal's not gonna cash flow with debt, then you just in general shouldn't be buying that deal. And so here's what you should know, is that a deal should always be able to afford to pay its own debt, or else it's just a bad investment in general. And how can we know? How can we know is the question. Well, one thing that's very important to look at is yield on cost. Another way to say that is NOI divided by your purchase price. And if we look at this example deal, our NOI divided by our purchase price is 2.8%. That's essentially our going in cap rate, is another way to say that. And 2.8% is really bad. And the reason that we're losing or having a negative 12% cash on cash is because our yield on cost, or our going in cap rate, is lower than our mortgage constant. Okay, I'll say that again. The reason we have negative leverage is because our mortgage constant is higher than our yield on cost, or our going in cap rate. Our going in cap rate, yield on cost, is lower than our mortgage constant. So if you're borrowing money and paying 6.51% a year, and your deal, the thing that you use to buy that debt with, is making less than 6.51% a year, you have negative leverage. So the question becomes, where do we realize a neutral leverage point, right? Which is, I'm gonna earn the same amount on this deal, whether I have debt or I don't have debt. That's called neutral leverage. Effectively, we bought a bigger deal, but it didn't really get us anywhere, right? And so the answer to that is, we need to pay a price where our cap rate, our yield on cost, is equivalent to our mortgage constant. So how would I do that? Well, here's how I would do that. I would take my NOI and I would divide it by my mortgage constant, okay? Just like how we kind of get a cap rate and a value, 860,857. So if we were to pay 857 for this deal, what do you think the NOI number is gonna change to? It's going to change to 6.51%, right? And now the mortgage constant didn't change because our amortization, 30-year amortization, and our interest rate is what determines the mortgage constant. The amount of money we borrow does not matter. We could borrow $1 billion as long as it's on a 30-year AM at a 5% interest rate. The mortgage constant is always going to be 6.51%. Now, if we borrow for 20 years, that's going to change the mortgage constant. If we borrow for 40 years, that's going to change the mortgage constant. If our interest rate goes up or down, those will change the mortgage constants, okay? So it's important to just kind of understand what your mortgage constant is, and then am I viewing deals that have a higher going in cap rate, a higher yield on cost than my mortgage constant. So here's how you can effectively in the real world use this information. You can go and you can say, hey banker, what are the terms today for multifamily? They say, Hayden, the terms today for multifamily are 30 years and 4.5%. It means you're looking for deals that have higher than a 6.14% cap rate, right? Now let's go back to our 6.51 example. Everything under, because you can see right here, my cash on cash is 6.51, my going in cap rate is 6.51, and my mortgage constant is 6.51. This is the exact dollar amount at which I have neutral leverage. Anything under that amount that I can buy this deal for, I will start to experience positive leverage, meaning my cash on cash is going to be higher than what the deal produces. So let's say I could buy this deal for $800,000. Okay, well what you see here is that I'm going in at a 7% cap rate, but now my cash on cash isn't 7%. It's not equivalent. It is now higher than 7%. It is at 8.98%. And the difference between the cash on cash at 8.98% and the 7% the deal produces is called negative leverage. We've turned a 7% investment through the negative leverage into a higher earning cash on cash deal, okay? I hope that makes sense. That is in a nutshell, these three numbers, right? This is the one that matters. This is what most people look at. But most people, when they're looking at cash on cash, they don't understand how a deal gets to a certain amount of cash on cash. The deal gets to the certain amount of cash on cash through these two different numbers. Pretty much the mortgage constant and the going in cap rate or the yield on cost is what produces the result of the cash on cash. So now when you're going out and looking at deals, you can calculate your mortgage constant very quickly based off what your bankers, what your loan length, what your interest rates are, and what those are on the market. And when you go and you start looking at deals, let's say you figure out that your mortgage constant is a 6.51, you start going and looking deals and you see something that has a cap rate of 5%. Don't even bother. Right? You're gonna have negative leverage. Why would you want to negatively lever yourself? Don't even bother. You go and you see a deal that has a 7% cap rate, you can say, okay, now we're talking, right? I know that I'm gonna have an 8.98% or higher cash on cash, right? You see a deal that's got a 8% cash on cash. Even better, we're gonna experience more positive leverage the higher the NOI number, the cap rate number is than the mortgage constant, and the lower the yield on cost is than the mortgage constant, the worse, the more severe your negative leverage is going to be. So all this was kind of stemmed from a conversation that I was having with a person in my mentorship program. And, again, they had brought me essentially a deal like this where the purchase was $2 million and they had negative cash on cash. And they said, hey, Hayden, I'm going to, my plan here because the cash on cash goes negative, but the NOI is positive, so I'll just pay all cash for it. I said, don't pay all cash for it, right? You're shooting the messenger almost. It's not the debt's fault that you have negative. The problem is that you're paying too much for this deal. Let's not pay $2 million for this deal. Let's find a price at which you can have positive cash on cash. Because he just thought that this deal would never cash flow, but what he didn't realize is that the mortgage constant was set, but that the yield on cost was the variable at play which we could impact on how much we were willing to pay for that deal. The NOI was set. How much we were willing to pay for that deal is what gave us those end results of the cash on cash. So all that to say, negative leverage, if you know it, if you can understand the concepts of it, and if I went too fast, drop any questions below. Happy to help out. Watch the video again. Once you understand the mortgage constant and how it positively or negatively levers out your deal, you can start to look at deals way quicker and just understand what the end result's gonna be. So if you found this helpful, please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It pleases the YouTube gods and it would make me happy as well. Thanks guys, I appreciate you watching.